and I'll share my screen for the lyrics. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodhanam Janaranjana Yasodhanam Yasodhanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yasodhanam Yamunatira Jari Yamunatira Anachari Anachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Vihari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mutirayat. So we're reading through 13 to 19. So I'll just run through up to text 19 and then we could do call and response on the Sanskrit starting at text 19. Shri Rajovacha Ponamasa Puman Brahman Kasya Kim Virya Evacha Kasmad Guham Kata Shishye Kim Tejo Yavanardanaha. King Parikshit said, "Who was that person, O Brahmana? To which family did he belong? And what were his powers? Why did that destroyer of the barbarian lie down to sleep in the cave? And whose son was he?" For those just tuning in today, he's talking about Muchakunda, who was a great warrior, and after fighting battles for the demigods for a long time, laid down to sleep in the cave before finally killing one of Krishna's enemies. Shishukuvacha sa ikshvaku kule jato mandhatri tannayo mahan Muchakunda iti kyato ramanya satyasangaraha. Sukadeva Goswami said, Muchakunda was the name of this great personality who was born in the Ikshvaku dynasty as the son of Mandhata. He was devoted to Brahminical culture and always true to his vow in battle. Just wanted to quickly say, isn't it so nice that this is thought of as a way to glorify somebody? He was devoted to Brahminical culture. Nowadays, people are glorified for being averse to Brahminical culture, isn't it? Like, it's considered cool or attractive or noble, maybe not exactly noble, but it's considered right and proper to want more than you need, to pursue more and more things unnecessarily, to be proud and to be exacting and to enjoy endlessly, to buy super yachts like Jeff Bezos or have these billion-dollar homes, et cetera, et cetera. But here, it's someone is being glorified for being devoted to simple Brahminical culture, which is based around the idea of service to God and humility, austerity, things like that. It's like as the soul, we know that that's right. It feels so much better than buying a mega yacht or being gluttonous in some way. But somehow or other, here in Kali Yuga, we've got it all mixed up, upside down. But this is why it's so important to read the Bhagavatam, because we're reminded of what's actually cool and what's actually really nice in the world. And this is what's really nice, Brahminical culture. And always true to his vow in battle. Sayachita Sudaganir Indraya Atmarakshane Asurdebhya Praditrastais Tadraksham So Karochchiram. Begged by Indra and the other demigods to help protect them when they were terrorized by the demons, Muchukunda defended them for a long time. Labdva guham tesva palam Muchukundam atabhuvan Rajan Viram Matam Krichtrad Bhavanna Paripalanat. When the demigods obtained Kartikeya as their general, they told Muchukunda, O king, you may now give up your troublesome duty of guarding us. Naralokam Parityajya Rajam Nihatakantakam Asman Palayato Vira Kamaste Sarva Ujitaha. Abandoning an unopposed kingdom in the world of men, O valiant one, you neglected all your personal desires while engaged in protecting us. Sutta Mahishu Bhavato Yatayo Matya Mantrinaha Rajascha Tulya Kalina Nadhuna Santi Kalitaha. The children, queens, relatives, ministers, advisors, and subjects who were your contemporaries are no longer alive. They have all been swept away by time. Kalitaha, forced to move on by time. It's a cool phrase, cool word. No direct English translation. Kalitaha, forced to move on by time. You can see how the language of Sanskrit formed around religious ideology. You could say eternal truths. This word kalita, we're going to focus on that one today. Forced to move on by time. Such a cool concept. Something that we don't often think about in the Western world. So we'll do call and response here behind closed mics. We'll go line by line and then do the word for word. Kalobaliyan balinam Bhagavan Ishwaro Vyayaha Raja Kalayate Kridan Pashupalo Yata Pashun Kalaha Time Baliyan more powerful Balinam then the powerful Bhagavan Ishwaraha the Supreme Personality of Godhead Avyayaha inexhaustible Rajaha mortal creatures Kalayate causes to move Kridan playing Pashupalaha a herdsman Yata as Pashun domestic animals. Translation. Inexhaustible time, stronger than the strong, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. Like a herdsman moving his animals along, He moves mortal creatures as His pastime. Such a cool verse. I was reading this verse last night and I was thinking, time is so cool. I started looking up names, not that where my wife is pregnant, but like if I have a son, it'd be cool to name him something to do with Kala, time. It's just such a cool concept. It is Krishna, Supreme Personality God Himself. Stronger than the strong, Krishna Himself. Like a herdsman moving his animals along, He moves mortal creatures as His pastime. So cool. Purport. The universe is created to gradually rectify the contaminated souls trying to exploit material nature. This is just a fantastic purport by, I suppose it's Hriday Nandamaraj and Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu. But such a small one you could see, but it's really powerful and cool to think to ponder philosophically. The Lord moves the conditioned souls along according to their karma through the various stages of spiritual rectification. Beautiful. Just a beautiful aspect of Krishna that this is time, and it helps us understand how Krishna is our friend because everything is moving as a result of time, and it's not moving whimsically or haphazardly, but it's actually moving in such a way that we can be brought through the various stages of spiritual rectification. So as we watch the clock tick, seconds tick on by, we can know that that's Krishna moving that hand and simultaneously moving us closer to him. Thus the Lord is like a herdsman. The word Pashupala literally means protector of animals. That's really cool to think about. Krishna is protecting us. He's moving us along and protecting us like we're a Jenna lamb or something. Nice to see you, Jenna, also. Who moves the creatures under his protection to various pastures and watering spots in order to protect them and sustain them. Very kind. You can see why that imagery of Jesus as the shepherd is so powerful and still rings true so many centuries later. That's really our relationship with God to a large extent. Is we're just kind of these lesser cognitively able animals who are under his protection, under his dominion, and he's very lovingly guiding us so that we can be sustained and become stronger. A further analogy is that of a doctor who moves the patient under his care to various areas of a hospital for diverse kinds of examination and treatment. Similarly, the Lord brings us through the network of material existence in a gradual cleansing process so that we can enjoy our eternal life of bliss and knowledge as his enlightened associates. Thus, all of Muchakunda's relatives, friends, and co workers had long ago been swept away by the force of time, which, of course, is Krishna himself. So we're being swept away by Krishna himself. Very cool. Om Agyanatimanandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve. So I have my notes here. Let's see what I had to say. Yes. So, yeah, I was very moved by a few different aspects of this purport. Um, one of the cool things I realized was that Krishna is time in one sense, but in another sense, the extent to which we experience Krishna as time, as moving us along towards him, or perhaps, in some ways you could say away from him, is based on our own free will. So in that sense, time is kind of like electricity in that it can be used for good or bad purposes, or maybe good or bad isn't the right word. Perhaps I mean to say it could move us in such a way that we're directly coming closer to Krishna, or we are taking the long road, the scenic route that is a bit more perhaps painful and drawn out. But ultimately, what it comes down to is the fact that time is moving. It's moving along, and we could use it for good or we could use it for bad. In the same way that a river is moving along, and somebody could go then and install a hydraulic system through which one could develop, say, electricity that can be used to power the lights in a temple or something like that. Or somebody else could come and install the same kind of hydraulic system, but use it for electricity that will power a slaughterhouse. And so, in the same way, we could choose to use time to our ultimate advantage in a way that will bring us closer to Krishna in a very quick and efficient way, or it can be used in such a way that we get more and more bogged down by the material nature and we only get to Krishna after a very long time. So then the natural kind of sequence in terms of how to use time in our best interest would be how to set up our life in such a way that time is working for us instead of against us. And so this is where sadhana comes in. And by developing a very strong sadhana, a very regular sadhana, in which every single day we are adding tokens or adding funds to our spiritual bank account, then by the force of time, those funds will increase over time to the point where we become spiritually rich, we become spiritually wealthy. I forget the exact quote, it was something that Warren Buffett said, but he said that the two most powerful forces in the world are, I think it was something, had to do with nature and compounding interest. And so this is a phenomenon that we see in investing, where the stock market is pretty much guaranteed to give you a certain percentage of returns if you put your money into it and just kind of leave it there. And what happens is that over time, the percentage of returns that you get on that money multiplies year after year after year until, you know, if you put $5 in today, it could become $5,000 in a couple of years because of this force of compounding interest. And so, in the same way, if we invest our time into our spiritual life, little by little every day, then over the course of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, we'll notice that those funds, that currency of time that we have invested over the course of our spiritual lives has compounded in interest and multiplied in value in a considerable way. And we'll one day look back and realize that, wow, I've really come a long way. And I've done so almost unknowingly. But that's the beauty of time, that if we use it to our advantage, if we even just put in a little bit of time every single day, then over the course of a long period of time, we'll see huge results. I I was reminded of this picture I saw recently, and it had a big slab of rock, and somebody had, I guess, around 50 or 80 years ago, set up different kind of water dropping droplet systems. And so one of them, they had the water start dropping on it. I think it was like 60 years ago. And then another one, it was started dropping maybe 30 years ago. Another one, it was like 10 years ago. And you could see the difference in that the one that started 60 years ago, there was a considerable hole developing within that slab of rock. And then it got smaller and smaller as the years decreased. And so, in the same way, by that steady dropping of spiritual vibration into our consciousness, and the hard rock that's surrounding the heart is gradually eroded, and we become more and more in tune with our super soul and with the love that we have naturally for Krishna. So it's very important that we develop a kind of system, a kind of automatic watering system through which our bhakti creeper can be developed over time. Otherwise, the natural kind of course of the material world is such that we will be gradually covered over more and more, just like dust gradually thickens over a mirror. This is the nature of the material world. Unfortunately, and I hate to break it to you if you haven't heard this yet, but the sun has limited energy, and so it's only a matter of time before it runs out, actually, and our solar system will no longer uh, exist. And this is kind of the status quo throughout the entire material universe, that everything around us is gradually decaying. This is the law of entropy. And so, in the same way, if we if we don't stand up and fight against that decay, that is trying to overtake us, trying to overtake our not only our physical bodies but also our consciousness. And we will gradually be eroded away into oblivion, and we'll be forced to take birth after birth after birth, millions and millions and millions of times over, in a dead and dying world, being thrown deeper and deeper into various degrees of ignorance. There's a very powerful Dylan Thomas poem that I like to think about sometimes when I feel that I'm being thrown into ignorance just by the natural course of the material world that's going on around me. And it's a famous poem. It was in that movie Interstellar. Anyone seen that? And it says, "Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light." It was actually a poem written to his father as he was dying, trying to, I suppose, rouse him from his death, uh, his inevitable death throes. But ultimately, death is inevitable. That darkness is always around us, right? Actually, the entire material universe is inherently dark. The only reason that it's not dark is because of these light sources that we have around us, right? Like right now, it's about 30 degrees outside of my apartment. Because of the lights I have in here, because of the heater I have beside me, it's keeping me from being cold. But if we didn't have those things, then we'd be in a very dark and cold place right now. So, in the same way, the whole material universe is kind of this dark place, and it's getting darker actually gradually. But by fighting against that dark through the powerful process of hearing and chanting about the supreme light, Krishna, then we can rage against that dying of the light and cultivate an eternal flame within us that will eventually incinerate our material bodies and incinerate our sojourn here in the material cosmos. So it's very nice to understand that we have that flame of Krishna burning within us, but we must also fan that spark. Otherwise, we will inevitably be overtaken by the laws of entropy here in the material world that are gradually decaying all the sources of light around us that are ultimately temporary. In that sense, you could think of it that the material world is kind of an eternally dark place. It's in direct juxtaposition to the spiritual world, which is an eternally light place. So, in order to combat this darkness that's surrounding us, we have to cultivate this light. We have to not let ourselves fall into this gentle night, as Dylan Thomas put it. We have to rage against this dying of the light around us by cultivating a very strong flame of Krishna consciousness within our hearts. So, that's kind of very abstract and kind of spacey, perhaps, but on a very practical level, what it ultimately comes down to is a strong sadhana, is making the time every day for just a little bit of hearing and chanting, or just a little bit of the edge of the wedge, you could say. If anyone's ever seen a wedge before, it's a very tiny um, point that goes into a space, and then the point gradually gets larger. And so, if we just let Krishna enter into our lives on a daily basis, even from a small point, just a little bit of hearing, a little bit of chanting, then because Krishna's nature is all expansive, I know most of you have heard the story of Matsya. Starts off as a little goldfish and then ends up being this enormous um, sea monster, divine sea monster that swims all around the whole planet. Um, so you know that this is Krishna's nature. We just start with a little bit, or Vamanadeva also, same thing. Same thing. You just start with a little bit, just 3 paces, just 3 verses of Bhagavatam a day, just 3 little mantras or 3 rounds of Hare Krishna. And then gradually, that will expand in our lives until we're fully immersed in Krishna. And the reason being is because, even if we don't feel like we don't have much time, if we feel like, oh, all we can really do is chant one round or chant, one verse of Bhagavatam or whatever it is, ultimately we'll get a taste. And then through that taste, we'll lose the taste for the other things that are taking up more of our time unnecessarily. And we'll make more and more time for Krishna. Krishna will kind of make more and more time for himself, for us. He'll give himself to us, show himself to us more and more by that sincere endeavor on our part, and gradually kind of take over our lives in a good way. Um, my spiritual master often uses this adage that it's not time actually when we say we don't have enough time, but it's taste, right? I remember just yesterday. So we're kind of in the process of moving right now. We haven't really shared this with many people, but we're actually moving back to the city. My wife and I, we just got an apartment up on the Upper East Side, and so we'll be moving there gradually over the course of the next 2 weeks or so. But I'm starting my new job there on Tuesday, and my wife will be here for the next week and a half or so. And so I'm trying to get as much done as possible so that she doesn't have to be left with like a bunch of painting and packing and stuff like that. Um, so yesterday I didn't have work, and so I was able to um, do a little bit more, but I wound up doing perhaps a little bit too much. And what wound up happening was it was 3 o'clock, and I hadn't chanted any rounds yet. And it was starting to get dark out, and I was like, "Oh my God, what am I gonna do?" And I'd been in that situation once or twice before, where like getting towards the end of the day, I still had all my rounds left, and luckily I had the experience that um, it takes me 2 hours to chant my rounds, and I know that if I just sit down for 2 hours and start chanting and don't do anything else, then after 2 hours passes, I will be done with all my rounds. And it's like this interesting thing, and that in our minds sometimes we could think, oh my God, I'm out of time, how am I ever going to get it done? But if we think of it on a very practical level, then oftentimes we could make it happen. But the reason why I'm bringing this up more in relation to the story is or in relation to the class is the fact that I probably could have chanted a couple more rounds like during the day, um, had I cut down on other activities. Like I probably could have slept a half hour less, and I probably could have taken a half hour less in eating, and then I would have had about 6 or 7 more rounds done by the time I got to 3 p.m. And so in reality, we may think that, oh, I don't have any time to do this. I don't have any time. I didn't have any time today. Most of the time we did have some time, some more time, but because we didn't have that taste, we didn't make time for it. So, I'm at this stage, unfortunately, in my Krishna consciousness, confessions going on here, where I have more of a taste for eating and sleeping sometimes than for chanting my rounds. And so, what that ultimately looks like is maybe I'll spend a little more time sleeping when I could be chanting, or I'll spend a little bit more time eating and just kind of relaxing than chanting. And so it's nice to have that kind of coming to Jesus moment with ourselves every so often, where we think, well, actually, if I really wanted to, then I could, you know, do this or I could do that, as opposed to just kind of staying in that victim mentality and thinking, oh, well, I just can't. I don't have any time. I'm working too much. Um, so yeah, it's nice to get practical sometimes. But yeah, so my spiritual master often says that ultimately as we develop our Krishna consciousness, we'll develop such a taste for hearing and chanting that it's not that we won't have time to hear and chant, we won't have time to eat or sleep because we're just so immersed and so in love with our bhakti practice. We won't have time to watch TV or go and do other things like that just because we'll think like, oh no, I have to chant. I really would prefer to chant, and I remember reading in Prabhupada Lilamrita how people would he Prabhupada was recalling how like his there were times where like his friends would see him on the street and say like, oh hey, why don't you come to this movie with us? We're gonna go to the cinema. And Prabhupada would think like, no, I don't have any taste for that. I don't want to do that. I'd rather be reading my Bhagavatam, or chanting or doing my home program or something like that. So yeah, it's powerful to take stock of how we're using our time and try and see how we can use it in a way that over the course of the year, over the course of the next 5 years, over the course of the next few decades, um, we'll develop our Krishna consciousness in a really powerful way. And we'll be able to look back at our lives and see that compounding interest and how the time that we've put into our Krishna consciousness has manifested in beautiful ways. Otherwise, as we see here, the force of time will carry us away and sweep us away into a situation that uh, we may not be so proud of. So, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. And if there's any questions or comments, I would love to hear them.
It's so nice that Krishna, in the form of time, is carrying you back to New York, Anupam Prabhu. We're very excited for your comeback. That's
Thank you.
Krishna.
I'm so excited to be with you guys too. It'll be lots of fun.
Yeah, cool. Nice class. Okay, dear devotees, it's your turn. Time to ask questions. Time to share reflections. Damodar Priya.
Hare Krishna, Anupam Das Prabhu. First off, I said it in the chat, but in case you didn't read it, congratulations on your upcoming little Vaishnava or Vaishnavi. So excited to see you moving into this next stage of guiding a little devotee towards Krishna. So I was wondering.
Not yet. Not yet. That was just like a preemptive thing with the name. I was just thinking that like that would be a cool name, like once we do have one. But it is pretty high on our priority list. We're thinking hopefully the next year.
Oh, okay. Because I thought you said that your wife was pregnant, but I missed that part. But like that when she is pregnant. Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes.
Well, but it's still very beautiful that you have that intention because that you're already kind of setting your sights on giving a name to a little devotee that can kind of remind them about Krishna all the time.
Yeah.
But
I'm really excited.
with that kind of idea in mind, I was wondering, like, how, in your experience, are the best ways to either children or people who are totally new to Krishna to kind of gently start planting those seeds of their relationship to Krishna without overwhelming them, especially if, for example, they may be having trouble like doing their rounds all in the morning or, kind of things, very simple things like that. So how to encourage or plant the seeds with folks like that. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I'd say it's very specific to in general, it's very specific to the person and like your relationship with them, and so like me with like somebody who I met like on book distribution who's like, around my same age, my experience has been that like just becoming their friend and like showing that you really care about them and like showing up for them, showing you're interested in what they're interested in, and like, really kind of cultivating whatever aspect of Krishna consciousness that they're interested in, whether it's like the music, like the kirtan, or like they're really into the philosophy, or they're really into like astrology or like a certain aspect of the philosophy, or they're really into prasadam, whatever it might be, kind of really fanning that aspect of it, because at the end of the day we're all such unique souls. It's amazing that Krishna has made us so many perfectly unique individuals. And so like I think just in my experience really speaking to whatever is unique about them, whatever aspect of Krishna consciousness they really gravitate towards. Obviously someone's really into kirtan and they're not so like philosophical, then you're not going to want to like go deep into like Bhagavad Gita with them, or Bhagavatam or something, because they just won't be super interested in that. But if you take them to like there's a kirtan and introduce them to the kirtaniyas and to like the musicians there and like give them friends, that they can feel connected to. And I think ultimately just like on an evolutionary level, it's obvious that everybody is seeking to like fit in somewhere. And so like helping people feel like they can fit in like a certain aspect of Krishna consciousness, I think that's ultimately what gives them the inspiration and the faith to kind of like take it into their lives and like take that next step and like feel like, yeah, I want to be like a devotee, and like I could see myself with these guys like long term. And so that's been a big one. And with kids, I'm not so experienced. Obviously, Ananda Bihari obviously is really probably has some really good insight. But I have actually asked around a lot in terms of like my friends who are gurukulis who wound up becoming devotees, and I asked a lot of them like what made you like really get into Krishna consciousness, as opposed to like some of your friends who maybe were born devotees but didn't really take to it as much. And overwhelmingly, the number one answer I received was that they had friends who were devotees in Krishna consciousness. Like they had a community of friends that they could be a devotee kid with and like a devotee teenager with. And they could have like crushes and like go to friends' houses and like hang out and gossip and like and do kirtan at the same time and like have prasadam and like there's deities in the house, and so having like a Krishna conscious like kid environment and the Krishna conscious like teenage experience, I think was a big one for them. Because otherwise, if they don't have that sense of like fitting in and they don't have like that teenage experience within the devotee community, then they'll have to do it elsewhere because like that's natural. And but yeah, Nanda Bihari, if you want to add anything to that.
Thank you, Anupam Prabhu. I once asked that question to John Harrison's father, Kripamaya Prabhu. And I said, how come all three of your children are devotees, practicing devotees? They were gurukulis, but they stuck around and they're still active and inspired to practice bhakti. And the answer he gave was that our job as parents is to make it fun for them. Prabhupada will do the rest. Prabhupada will do the philosophy and, all that. But us as parents, we should make it fun. And Jamuna Jaya says in the chat, Guravani always says that Mother Rukmini made it fun for him. See, there you go. Make it fun for them.
Right.
And also, of course, I like your point about having friends in bhakti, crushes. I'm still around because I have a crush on Bhima Prabhu. That's my secret. All right. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, who's speaking next? You want me to call out? I can do that. I'm going to make it fun for you. Who wants to share a reflection, maybe a point that stuck with them? Such a wonderful class, such a poetic class. You sounded like you were reading from a book or something. You should be a writer on a poem.
Hare Krishna, Anupam. First of all, yay! I'm really happy that you guys are moving back. That's wonderful news. It's just a quick reflection. It's a very poignant class for me right now. I know several people who are, and I myself have to acknowledge that there's more in the rear view mirror of my life than going forward to think about how I spent my life and what time I have left. But I have a number of people in my life who are closer to what's probably the end and looking at how they are spending their life. And I remember something that Ganeshan has said, in his work with people who are dying in the hospital. He says there's such a difference for those that have spent and are spending that last bit of time in their life in their spiritual practices and the people that are not. I believe one time he says it's like the people that are not are like clawing. They're like desperate, like they're like a desperate caged animal. And the others, while with that, they may have some trepidation because it's the ultimate shift of things, but there's a calmness and there's a certainty. So your class just made me really think about that. It's such a difference, and as long as we breathe, we still have that time to make that shift. Krishna always says within a moment, in the moment. Look at Ajamil, like 88 years of debauchery, and then at the moment. So is both poignant and hope giving this speak about time. So thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Jamuna Jai. Yeah, time is so powerful, and it's heartening at the same time though that we could use it in our favor. it's so powerful, but it can be used to very powerfully impact our life in a good way. So it's just a matter of directing it properly, utilizing
Yeah,
it.
Srila Prabhupada says time is so valuable. You can't get back even a moment of time. This is how valuable it is. And if we waste time, this is how much a loser we are. If we waste time. That's Srila Prabhupada's quote. I remember reading that. Srila Prabhupada revered time. He didn't waste time. He was very structured.
Mm.
So you worship Krishna in the form of time. You plan out your day. Vaisheshika Prabhu is keen on that, right? Anupam Prabhu. Can you share some tips from Vaisheshika Prabhu about time in life of a devotee? How devotee treats time?
Sure. Yeah, he like you said, yeah, he's very intentional about his time. It's all planned out. You know, I'm on a group called VDA Productions where we work on his books that he's producing, and we've had to, you know, it's a biweekly meeting, but there's also times where we have to set up another meeting, kind of outside the regular scheduled uh, ones, and every single time we've had to do that, it's always he has to check his calendar, he has to move something around, regardless of the time of day. It's always like, let me get back to you. I need to look at my calendar because you could. And the reason why is because his entire day, it seems like almost every day is completely structured out with different meetings, different things. His morning, especially, is airtight. Um, what he does is the night before, he'll set up his entire morning sadhana. And so he'll set out the books he's going to read before he chants his rounds. He'll set out his yoga mat, his exercise stuff, so that as soon as he wakes up, then everything is, he just walks through his morning program, basically. And it's been like that for decades, basically. And so, yeah, I guess an important aspect of time also is the fact that the most important time of the day is the morning time, you know. And if we could have a really strong morning program like that, that is really structured, and that we make sure we use every moment instead of just sleeping through it, then we could be assured of having a very strong day, and then a very strong week, a very strong month, very strong year, and then eventually, if we can really stick to that, we'll have a very strong life in Krishna consciousness.
Thank you. I think he says something like, don't greet the dawn without a map. Is that a word, a saying that he used? Yeah, he uses that a lot, apparently.
Sure. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Henry Prabhu says morning program. Yes. Yeah, morning program is something that Srila Prabhupada set up for us. Jamunajaya says, time can't be stopped, stored, or changed. I heard Chaitanya Charan say, yeah, we can't store Krishna. Krishna says, time I am. So when we go sick, what do we do, Anupam? How do we manage time when that happens?
uh, well, for one, of course, you know, if we are really conscious with our times, if we are extremely regulated in terms of our sleeping, our eating, and yeah, how we use our time without the day, we'll fall sick much less often. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise, as Prabhupada would say. But of course, you know, still we'll get sick from time to time. And yeah, my understanding is we just do our best. Obviously, the key is sincerity to all spiritual practices, all spiritual questions, that if we're actually sincere and honest, then we'll be able to navigate all these kinds of things. Because, like I said earlier, you know, I could have been more sincere yesterday, probably, but I'm glad I at least thought of it. And when considering that, you know, I probably could have chanted a few more rounds, you know, here or there, if I was really being honest with myself. It's not that I just got here because I had so much stuff to do, you know, in preparing for the move. If I really was more conscientious with my time, then so yeah, these kinds of you know, sudden, unexpected life things happen. You know, whether it's sickness or a move or um, yeah, any kind of unexpected big shift that kind of impacts our day to day. But if we're honest with ourselves and sincere, then we'll be able to navigate it and find our way back to the regularly scheduled program once things return to normal.
Thank you, Anupam Prabhu. One time in the early days when Srila Prabhupada got sick, Brahmananda and the team, they called for a doctor. And the doctor came. It was a weekend, but they got the doctor to come. The guy comes, inspects, and then everybody's barefoot, wearing jeans, walking back and forth, chanting around. Says, "Where am I? What is this place?" So the doctor examined Prabhupada, and then Brahmananda Prabhu came up to the doctor and says, "So what's happening? How can we help?" And the doctor looked at Brahmananda and said, "The old man prays too much. Make him take a morning walk. Make him move." So that's how morning walks started from that doctor. So sincerity, it's very important, and doing our best is important, but being proactive in terms of our health is also something that we can be neglectful of. Our body belongs to Lord Chaitanya, and we want to keep it smooth and as best as we can. Like morning walks came from it. So much nectar from one sentence. The old man prays too much.
And also Prabhupada's honesty and sincerity also, that, many other holy men, so to speak, may have said, "Oh, well, the doctor doesn't know what he's talking about,"
Yeah.
and I'm gonna show my following that actually praying is the best thing you can do, and I'm gonna really make a stand here and stand up to the Western scientists and their Western medicine, and whatnot.
Yeah. There was none of that in Prabhupada. No ego.
So sincere, the pinnacle of sincerity, the pinnacle of honesty, and as a result, and you could see that because of that, like you said, so much nectar came from that, so much more instruction, so much more realization was shared, and that's how we could understand that Prabhupada is an instrument of Krishna, because of that sincerity.
Chad.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Adipusha Prabhu, Jani Tai Prabhu, Temple Room. Thank you for the darshan.
There's
Amrita
a
Kishore.
question in the chat from Kartik Prabhu, if he's still here to answer.
Okay, let's see. Kartik. Thank you for the wonderful class. I heard in one of these classes that Krishna never rolls back time, even for his devotees. Can you speak a bit? Why is that? Krishna rolling back time. I think he does roll back time. He brought back his guru's son from the dead. He brought him back to life. That's at least one instance. Krishna does not exist within time. He is the source of time, and being source of time, I guess he can move it back and forth. Bhima Prabhu?
Haribol. I just, when that question was asked, immediately the thought came to mind that so much we have done over many lifetimes and it's all forgiven. Krishna forgives and forgets all of it when we turn to him. So I would think that that would be the best manifestation of time rolled back, that he only remembers when we were with him, and he only remembers that we are his and not that we ever turned away. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. Very encouraging. Very encouraging. I can ask Anupam Kartik's question, and maybe I'll share tomorrow what he says. Okay. Anyone else wants to say anything in relation to Krishna and time? Adipusha Prabhu? You have to unmute yourself. Let me ask you to unmute yourself. Hold on.
Krishna.
Hi, Krishna, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a really nice passage in the Bible that says, for everything, there was an old song, for everything, turn, 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 there is a season, right? And a time for every purpose under heaven, that by Krishna's arrangement, there's just enough time and specifically set aside and indicated for whatever he wants done. And in the age of Kali, it says that people don't have patience. That we want things before Krishna's ready to have it done perfectly in all good timing. And sometimes it might be something appropriate even for devotional service, but Krishna has his own timing, right? So if we get in line with his schedule, we're not trying to push the river, we're not trying to force things to happen before they're supposed to. And just look at the wonderful order in the universe. There's a time to plant corn, where the farmers say when the locust leaf is as big as a squirrel's ear, that's when you plant your corn. When the leaves on the tree are at a certain size. So you plant it in April, and then you don't harvest in May or June or July or August, September, October, you get corn. Right? You can't force a premature pregnancy, or can't rip a plant up out of the ground before it's ready to grow. But things are happening in perfect timing, Krishna's perfect timing. Then we can relax, because like been mentioned already, many people perceive time as all-devouring time, just consuming and pushing us and forcing us, or not going fast enough for us. But if we just go along with Krishna's timing, then we are peaceful. Anyway, just so many things Prabhupada said. One important thing, reflection on what he said was, Prabhupada said, don't waste time. Don't waste a minute. Have good regulations. Make your schedule with your intelligence and then follow it carefully. Now is the time to come to class. Now is the time for kirtan. Anyway, I'll let you go. We have to go to, it's time for Krishna's prasad distribution. I have to keep moving.
Yeah. Krishna lines up things perfectly for us. There's a one cool story. Srila Prabhupada was very eager to get his books published. That was his top priority all throughout the history of this movement. And then the person who was in charge of the press at that time, when Prabhupada visited the temple, the devotee who was in charge of the press, he stopped coming to classes because he was so busy getting the books published. And that became known to Srila Prabhupada, that the person who was in charge of the books didn't have enough time, apparently, to attend the class. Hold on, let me mute Adipurusha Prabhu.
What's that?
I'm muting you because you're making noise. So when Prabhupada found out that the devotee who was in charge of the book publishing didn't have enough time to attend class, he sent his secretary over to that devotee and told him, tell him to close down the press. We don't need that press. If he doesn't have the time to attend class, then we don't need that press. And knowing how serious Srila Prabhupada took his book publishing service, we can see the gravity of that instruction to make sure that we arrange our life in such a way that we are available to hear about Krishna regularly. Okay, with this, it's time to wrap up, time to practice what we have learned in class, time to say encouraging words to Amrita Kishori, whom I'm very happy to see every morning so steadily here, Gautam Ghosh, Bruce, Kirtan Addict, Yogeshwari, Susan, Sharmila, Ishwari Sundari, Spirit Soul. Yeah, there he is. Good to see you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Dana Keli, Prabhu. Okay, have a wonderful day, everybody.